Morning, guys. Actually, good morning, Adrian. We're gonna be here recording this session. This is gonna be our first chapter, our first lecture, and it's gonna be about cardiovascular system. A few days ago, on Tuesday, we had our first lecture and lab. We're gonna have every single session, our labs. We're gonna have a few minutes at the beginning, sharing with you some information about the lecture. But I'm gonna try to share with you these slides for lecture on Thursdays, 8:30 a.m. every single Thursday. I'm gonna let you know before with an invitation. I'm gonna send you the link for the WebEx meeting. Um, on Tuesday, we had the first face-to-face session. There, uh, we had the opportunity to read the evaluation and the syllabus, some things on the syllabus. Please, guys, go over the syllabus, go over the schedule, and you have the complete information in your D2L. Always use your D2L. As an official way to be in communication, we have the email and D2L. We have the announcements, but you can use as well the Remind app. Remember the Remind app. For these sessions, for the Remind app, we have available Monday through Thursdays, and it's going to be always 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, guys, this session is going to be about 60 to 75 minutes. We're going to try to advance as much as we can for this lecture, the cardiovascular um, lecture. And we're going to start with the heart. This is chapter 15. The heart, as you already know, it's a piece of muscle. Remember, we have three kind of muscles. We have skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Then we have for the heart cardiac muscle, and for the blood vessels we have smooth muscle. The heart is a hollow organ. Remember, it's an organ in charge of pumping blood, and it has a shape of as a cone. It's a muscular pump. Remember, it's a pump. Its main function is going to be pumping blood to deliver the nutrients, the oxygen, and to carry some other things such as waste and gases. Uh, and it generates the force to transport all of these things. We have the cardiovascular system, which is the heart and the blood vessels. But if we talk about the circulatory system, we need to include blood. Uh, because we have two systems to deliver the blood, we're going to have two circuits. The main one is going to be deliver blood to your body and to your head and your body. Then you have blood vessels delivering blood to your head, to your neck, and the rest of your body, your limbs, your trunk. But we have another circuit. It's a shorter circuit, it's a smaller circuit. And that circuit is for delivering blood to your lungs because we need to oxygenate that blood. Then we have two circuits again. We have the pulmonary circuit, and that circuit is for oxygenating our blood and to expel the carbon dioxide, the CO2, because we produce after respiration, after the cellular respiration, we produce some carbon dioxide, and we need to eliminate that carbon dioxide, and we do that on the pulmonary circuit right here in the lungs, and the other circuit, which is bigger, larger, it's for deliver oxygen to our body, to our cells, and to take off the carbon dioxide and other waste that we have, and we have to deliver to digestive system or maybe for the urinary system because they are waste, and we eliminate CO2 through the lungs, and we eliminate other waste through the kidneys and urinary system and digestive system. Then remember, we have two circuits. We have pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit, which is going to be delivering and taking blood from the body. Guys, here you have a picture of the heart. Again, it's a muscular structure. It's a cone shape. You have this part. It's going to be the base, and this part on the tip is going to be the apex. Remember our first session, we have 4 chambers. We have 2 ventricles, left and right, and 2 atria. Remember, if it's singular, it's going to be atrium. If it's plural, it's going to be atria. And the outer part, because it seems like a dog ear, is called auricle. Then this outer part of the atria is called an auricle. Then we have the right auricle, the right ventricle, left ventricle, and left auricle. And here we have great vessels. This one is the aorta. It's the most important artery in our body. And this one is the pulmonary trunk. It's the origin for the pulmonary arteries. Again, this is the heart. These are the great vessels, and it's pointing the apex of the heart. It's pointing the fifth space here between ribs, the 5th intercostal space, and this is the base. This is the base. These lower place here on the heart is the base. This is the apex. This is left ventricle. This is right ventricle. This is right auricle, and this is left auricle. Remember, these are the great vessels. Guys, if you remember, I told you on Tuesday, and I told you in AP1, if you remember that, we have serous membranes, and these serous membranes, they have layers. These serous membranes, usually they have a cavity between them, and they have some fluid. Then we have surrounding the whole cavity, the thoracic cavity, we have the pleura surrounding the lungs, and we have the pericardial cavity surrounding the heart. And between the lungs and the heart, we have this structure here called mediastinum. Regarding the coverings for the heart, we have some layers. If you remember, we have usually visceral layer attached to the organ, and surrounding the cavity, we have the parietal layer. These two layers are serous membranes, but on the heart, we have an extra layer, and that is called fibrous layer. Then we have 3 layers for the pericardium. We have fibrous layer, the outer tough layer outside, and then we have the serous layer, and it has 2 layers. It has parietal layer and visceral layer. Between the parietal layer and the visceral layer, we have fluid, and that is the pericardial fluid. And that fluid is in a virtual cavity. That cavity is the pericardial cavity. Again, we have 3 layers for pericardium. The outer one is made of fibrous tissue. It's called fibrous pericardium. Then we have a couple of serous membranes, and these are parietal pericardium and visceral pericardium. By the way, the visceral pericardium receives another name. It has a synonym, the epicardium, which is the outermost layer on the heart, directly on the heart. Then you can see here, you have this outer layer, fibrous layer, and then you have the serous membrane. Remember, you have here the right auricle, the right ventricle, left ventricle, and right and left auricle. When you see this view, the apex is going to be pointing to the left. This is the anterior view of the heart. Always. Always you have pointing to the left, the apex of the heart, you're going to have the anterior view. If, like in this one picture, this is the anterior view. How do I know? Because it's pointing, the apex is pointing to the left. But if you have, let me show you some view of the heart pointing maybe to the right, this one. If you see the heart pointing to the right, then you're going to see here is the posterior view. Always remember, if the view is pointing to the left, this the apex is pointing to the left, it's going to be the anterior view. If you have the apex pointing to the right, it's going to be the posterior view. Remember that because it's going to be key for your exam. Let me check another thing with you guys. Regarding the layers of the heart, we have 3 layers. We have the epicardium, we have the myocardium, and we have the endocardium. Pericardium or epicardium is made of connective tissue. Myocardium is made of muscular, cardiac muscular tissue. And the endocardium is made of connective tissue. You need to remember these 3 layers of the heart. Guys, I'm going to stop sharing with you my screen. I would like to see if you have so far any question. Let me stop sharing with you. Stop sharing. Okay, we have here Adrian, Brianna, Daniela, Emily, Jasmine. Guys, we can use a chat. You have a chat, or if you want, you can use your microphone, whatever you want. So far, do you have any questions so far? So far, we have the same things we had during the lab session. Do you have any question, guys? If you don't have any questions, I'm going to share with you my screen again, and I'm going to continue this session. Remember, this session is going to be recorded for you. Emily, you opened your mic. Do you have any questions? Emily? Okay. Then I'm going to share with you. No, thank you, Adrian. I'm going to share with you again my screen, and we are going to continue this session. Okay, guys, remember for every single exam, I'm always telling you guys, you need to take seriously these tables and charts. You have here 3 layers: epicardium, which is the same visceral pericardium, myocardium, and endocardium. These 3 layers are the heart, the wall of the heart. And you need to remember, this is connective tissue, this is muscular tissue, and this is connective tissue again. Guys, you need to identify now the structure of the heart inside of the heart. Then you need to know this is the interior wall of the auricle. The auricle is the external configuration of the atrium, right atrium. And this is the internal way, the internal view of the right atrium. Then we have here a communication with the right ventricle. This is the right ventricle. And you can see here the valve. This side we have a view of the left atrium right here. And we have here the left ventricle. As you can see here, the left ventricle is thicker, this wall, than this one. Again, the left ventricle is thicker because it's stronger, because it's in charge of pumping blood to our body, because it's the systemic circuit, and we're having here a thinner wall because this side of the heart is in charge of pumping blood to the lungs, and the heart and the lungs are really close. And you need more power, more force from the left side than the right side. As you can see here, you can see some structures. The valves dividing atria from the ventricles are called AV valves or atrioventricular valves. On the right side, we have tricuspid valve. On the left side, we have mitral or bicuspid valve. Why tricuspid? Because we have 3 cubes. And why bicuspid? Because we have only 2 cubes or cupids. Guys, remember, the valves between the ventricles and the blood vessels are called semilunar. And on the right side, we have the pulmonary valve, semilunar pulmonary valve. And between the left ventricle and the aorta, we have the left semilunar valve, which is called aortic. Then again, right atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle, left atrium. Another thing you have to remember, guys, the right side of the heart is always carrying deoxygenated blood, always deoxygenated blood. And the left side of the heart is carrying always oxygenated blood, always oxygenated blood. Then you can see here some other structures, such as the papillary muscles, pulling the strings, and these strings are called chorda tendinae. And you have here the cuspids or valves. Here in this side we have papillary muscles, and these strings are called chorda tendinae. And you have here the valves. Remember, the connection between ventricles and the blood vessels are the semilunar valves. Remember, you have 4 great vessels. You have the pulmonary trunk, and it's going to be the pulmonary artery on the left side and the right side. You have the aorta. This is going to be the ascending aorta. This is going to be the loop of the aorta. And this is going to be the descending aorta. And for the right side, for the veins, you have the vena cava. You have a superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava. Both of them are draining on the right side, on the right auricle, on the right atrium. And you have the pulmonary veins. And the pulmonary veins are carrying blood to the left atria. The pulmonary veins, they are carrying oxygenated blood, and the superior and inferior vena cava, they are carrying deoxygenated blood. From the left ventricle, we're going to be pumping blood, oxygenated blood to our body. Then we use the aorta. And from the right ventricle, we're going to be pumping blood, deoxygenated blood, to our lungs. And we use the pulmonary artery. Guys, you need to remember then we have 2 atria, 2 ventricles, we have 4 valves, 2 AV valves and 2 semilunar valves. You need to remember what kind of blood do you have on the left side and the right side. We're going to have a lot of questions, and these questions, they're going to be really easy for you if you can remember these easy concepts. This is the structure inside the heart, guys. I already showed you, but I would like to compare this image with the image we're going to have next week during the dissection. You need to identify a structure such as the cups of the valves. You need to identify the strings or chorda tendinae. You need to identify the papillary muscles, and you need to identify these regions inside the muscle. We're going to be identifying all of them during our session for sure. Have in the heart, see here, we have like a skeleton made of connective tissue. It's surrounding our valves. You can see here, this is the mitral valve. This is the AV valve. between the left ventricle and the left auricle. This is the tricuspid valve. This is the valve between the right ventricle and the right atrium. This is the aortic valve. This is the semi-lunar valve. This is the valve between the left ventricle and the aorta. And finally, this is the pulmonary valve. And you can see this between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. Let me check with you. Give me a second, guys. I'm gonna taking notes of this. As you can see here, we have again another chart, and it's gonna be really important. Guys, remember the functions of the valves, it's avoid the backflow. Then that flow going backwards from the ventricles to the atria, or from the blood vessels to the ventricles, is avoided because we have valves. The same information I already gave you guys. Now we have here another view of the circulatory system of the circuits. Remember, the small one, the shorter one, is going to be the pulmonary circuit. And we have then blood flowing from the right ventricle to the left and right lungs. Then when we get oxygenated that blood is going to be coming back through the pulmonary veins to the left atria. That is the pulmonary circuit. Instead of that, we have this systemic circuit going the blood from the heart to the body. Then we have from the left side, from the left ventricle, we have the aorta pumping blood to the heart, to the head, neck, and the rest of the body, your limbs and your trunk. Then when you use that blood, then you have to eliminate the carbon dioxide and you have to get back that blood to the heart. You're using the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava, and they're going to be draining on the right atrium. And again, they have to go over the right ventricle to be pumped to the lungs. Then this circuit is called systemic circuit, and the lung circuit is called pulmonary circuit. Then we have two circuits of circulation. Here you can see better. From the aorta, from the left ventricle, we have a network of arteries, and then we have the organs, and then we have to go back to the heart. And we use the superior vena cava, the coronary sinus, which is the blood vessels, the main blood vessel turning back from the same heart, and the inferior vena cava. Finally, they're going to drain on the right atrium. They're going to go over the right ventricle and be pumped that blood through the pulmonary valve and then to the pulmonary trunk into arteries, pulmonary arteries. Remember, all in blue is deoxygenated blood and is the right side of the heart, and all in red is oxygenated blood, is the left side on the heart. Remember, this is the anterior view of the heart. The apex is going to be pointing to the left, and this is the posterior view. The apex is going to be pointing to the right. Let me check here what we need to identify here. Okay, guys, here it's important because you need to identify the coronary vessels. You were thinking, okay, we have blood in our whole body, but we need blood in our heart because the main organ we need to maintain with oxygen and nutrients, it's our heart. And for that purpose, we use these blood vessels. These small vessels are called the coronary circuit. Coronary circuit. Then we have coronary arteries. We have these interauricular, interventricular artery, and we have these side arteries as well. You need to identify the coronary arteries, and the coronary arteries are for oxygenated blood, but at the end, you're taking back that blood again to the right ventricle through the coronary sinus. Coronary sinus. We're going to see that structure better on Tuesday for our lab dissection. Guys, this is an image of RX. This is for studying the blood vessels in the heart. And we can see here, when we use contrast, we use some chemicals. By the way, these kind of RX images are using isotopes in order to see clearly the interior wall of these blood vessels. As you can see here, this is an anterior view because the apex is pointing to the left, and you can see here the coronary arteries. Again, you can see here the coronary circulation. We have right coronary artery and left coronary artery. Both of them are branches of the aorta. You can see here at the end, they're going to be turning back the blood to the right atrium through cardiac veins and finally to the coronary sinus. You need to identify these structures during the lab session. Guys, this is the structure of the muscle, cardiac muscle. If you remember, one of the structure of the cardiac muscle, one of the important information is the shape. And if you remember, the skeletal has a long shape, the smooth has a spindle shape, and cardiac muscle has, the fiber has a branched shape. And you can see here the striations. These are called intercalated disc, which is the communication between cells. This is important for your exam. Here you can see the electricity. You can see here the connectivity. You need to remember, we use, if you remember last semester AP1, I told you guys we use action potential or electricity to provoke contraction. And the only reason we have a heart is because we need a pump, and that will be contracting forever, for life. Actually, it's going to be around 7 billion times in your whole life. Then we need some electricity here. We need some generators. Then we have a conduction system. And the conduction system is really complex in the heart. But we're going to simplify that conduction system right here. We have a generator, which is the natural pacemaker of our heart, called SA node or sinoatrial node. This is the main power, the main source of electricity of our heart. Actually, if you take your pulse or your heart rate, you're going to see the normal heart rate is going to be 60 to 100. Actually, let me write it down. We have our normal rate, a normal pulse is going to be 60 to 100 per minute. This is going to be normal. And this piece of cells, a group of cells called SA node, is in charge of that. Again, our normal pulse or normal heart rate is going to be 60 to 100. That is going to be a really important data for your exam, because if it's below 60, you have an arrhythmia. If you have above 100, you have an arrhythmia. Then when you have below 60, it's called bradycardia. When you have more than 100, it's called tachycardia. Then if you have less than 60, it's going to be bradycardia. And if you have more than 100, it's going to be tachycardia. 60 to 100. Then this guy, the SA node, is in charge of that because it's the main pacemaker of your heart. Then we're going to have the origin of every single heartbeat right here. Then you are able to transmit the whole impulse, the whole electricity to the whole heart. Then the second one, we need to transmit this impulse from here to here. The second one is called the AV node, atrioventricular node, which is slower than this one. If, for example, if we have a failure of the SA node, maybe we're going to have a help with this one. And this one is called AV node or atrioventricular node. And then this atrioventricular node is going to spread the electricity, the impulse, to the septum. You can see here another structure. I already showed you this septum. The septum is going to be between ventricles. Then it's going to be the intervertricular septum. And right here, we have these bundles or branches. Because we have these branches or branches, this is the bundle of His. And then we have bundle of His, left branch, and bundle of His, right branch. And finally, we need to spread that electricity around the whole heart. And we use these fibers, small fibers, around the whole heart. These small fibers are called Purkinje fibers. Again, we have SA node, and then we have AV node, then we have the bundle of His or AV bundle, then we have the right branch and the left branch, and finally we have the Purkinje fibers. That order, that sequence of the impulse from the SA node to the Purkinje fibers is going to be for sure in your exam. You need to learn this sequence. This sequence is very important, and we're going to check that later on the ECG, which is the electrical register for the electrical activity of the heart. Again, guys, we have 60 to 100 per minute as the frequency, as the heart rate, and as the pulse rate. 60 to 100. Below 60 is going to be bradycardia. Above 100 is going to be tachycardia. Let's see what else we have here. Again, guys, you have here the SA node. Then you have the AV node. Then you have the AV bundle or bundle of His. Then you have left and right bundle branches. And finally, we have Purkinje fibers. And this is the order you need to learn. This is the sequence you need to learn. Okay, guys, now we're going to talk a little bit about the ECG. What is the ECG? Is the electrical activity. Put that electrical activity of the heart in a paper. That is the ECG. If you use a screen, it's going to be the same. You need to register the electrical activity of the heart. That is the ECG. And we're going to study our heart following this order. First, it's going to be the SA node. Then we're going to have the AV node. And then we're going to have the left and right branches and bundle of His, and finally the Purkinje fibers. Then the first event that we have in our heart is called P wave. P wave. Then let me take a second here. The first one here is going to be the P wave. P wave. The P wave is going to be the depolarization, if you remember these terms, depolarization of the right atrium or the left atrium. Both atrium, this is the P wave, the depolarization of the atria. This is the first event. This is the first curve. As you can see here, we have a lot of waves. Then the first one is going to be the P wave. And the clinical meaning is going to be the depolarization of the atria. Atrial depolarization. Atrial depolarization. The P wave, the first event on the ECG, is going to be the atrial depolarization. Then you have a second segment here. It's going to be like a rest. If you can see here, you can measure that electricity, that electrical activity using millivolts because it's electricity and during the time. And this is really short, milliseconds. Remember, this is going to be the millesimal part of a second. Then it's a second divided by 1,000. Then the first wave is going to be the depolarization of the atria, P wave, and then we have a rest. This rest is called PQ, PQ or PR. Then we have a third wave, It's called QRS complex. This wave is called QRS complex. And the meaning of this, the clinical meaning of this, is going to be the depolarization, but this time it's going to be of the ventricles. Then we're going to insert here a text box. Here. This is the depolarization again, but the ventricles. Depolarization for the ventricles, guys. This is depolarization for the ventricles, the QRS complex. Then the first wave here, small wave, rounded wave, is the P wave, and this is the atrial depolarization. Then we have, and stop here, is the segment PR. And finally here we have this peak. Actually, you can see here, one negative, one positive, another negative is the QRS complex, and the clinical meaning is going to be the depolarization of ventricles. Finally, we have another rest here, and this one is called segment ST, the segment ST, and the last wave we have here is the T wave, and the T wave is going to be the repolarization of the ventricles. Repolarization of the ventricles. Again, P wave is going to be the depolarization of the atria. This segment PR is the rest. Then we have another complex here called QRS complex, which is the depolarization of the ventricles. Then we have another rest here called segment ST. And finally, we have this wave called repolarization of the ventricles, as is the wave T. These are the basic structure for the ECG. Let's see again. Actually, let's see better this way. Yes, we're going to use here a pen. This one, it's P wave. It's the depolarization of the atrium. This complex here is the QRS complex. This is the depolarization of the ventricles. And this wave here is the T wave, which is the repolarization of the ventricles. Then we have P, we have Q, R, S. Remember, it's going to be one down, one up, and another down is Q, R, S. And then we have wave T. The clinical meaning of this one is the depolarization of atrium. The clinical meaning of this one is the depolarization of the ventricles. And finally, the wave T is the repolarization of the ventricles. If we have the depolarization of atrium and ventricles, and we have the repolarization of ventricles, where's the repolarization of the auricles, of the atrium? It's right here, but we cannot see because the complex QRX is occluding, is blocking that we can see the repolarization for atrium. Again, P wave depolarization for atrium. QRS is the depolarization for ventricles, and the wave T is the repolarization for ventricles. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my content here. Guys, I would like to know if you have so far any question. Remember, this session is going to be recorded and you can access that recording later. Okay, I think we have no questions here. We're going to share again my screen. Give me a second. Nice. Let me end my presentation here. And I need to come back to the presentation. Nice. Then this is the ECG. You're going to be studying later the alterations of the ECG. For example, this one. It looks normal. Not at all. It's abnormal. This is an arrhythmia. Then you need to know the normal frequency, the normal heart rate, the normal pulse in order to know if it's normal or not. You already know the normal way to have an ECG or AKG. It's going to be the same electrocardiogram. And you're going to see later the alterations of that. Guys, usually when you're a healthcare professional, you need to use the stethoscopes. We're going to be using in our lab stethoscopes in order to hear, to auscultate our heart. The auscultation of our heart is going to be using these stethoscopes over the chest of our patient, and we use over these 4 areas. This is the aortic area, the pulmonary area, the tricuspid area, and the mitral area. These 4 areas, guys, are for the 4 valves sounds, because the heart has at least 2 sounds. Usually, we can hear something like lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. 2 sounds. Every heartbeat, it has 2 sounds. Lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. And usually it's because you have closing the valves. For example, when you have the first sound, and it's going to be the sound of the AV valves. If you remember, AV valves are tricuspid on the right side and mitral from the left side. Then the first sound, lub, in lub dub, lub is going to be because these 2 are closing. And then the other sound, the dub, which is more intense, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. Then the second sound is going to be because of the semi-lunar valves that are closing. When you hear something different, to lub, such as a third sound or a fourth sound, they are called murmur, and these are abnormal. Usually, you're gonna hear that murmur. Maybe in a baby, it could be normal, but if it's an adult, for sure, it's gonna be abnormal. Then we're gonna be studying that later. Guys, this chart is really complex, but it's really useful. We're going to be studying this chart during the lab, but first, I would like to send you a video, and our first survey before the lab is going to be about this chart, because we have here all the events that we have in a cardiac cycle. Then we have the sounds, we have the pressures, we have the electrical activity. All of it is going to be in only one video and only one chart. And I'm going to send you a video about that. It's going to be later with the announcements. I'm going to send you the video. Then the important thing here is going to be the sounds of the heart. Lub dub. These two sounds are produced. S1, the lub, is produced because the AV valves are closing. And the second sound, the dub, is going to be because of the semi-lunar valves are closing. Then we have to follow a cycle. We're going to study the cardiac cycle. When we receive blood from the body, deoxygenated blood from the body, through the vena cava, it could be superior vena cava or inferior vena cava, we're going to receive that blood to our auricle, to our atrium. Then here, you're going to have blood deoxygenated. We're going to pump that blood to our right ventricle. And then we need to have this valve open because we need to pass that blood from the atrium to the ventricle. After that, you need to close that valve. Why? Because you need to avoid backflow from the ventricle to the atrium again. Then you need this valve open at the beginning when you're pumping blood from here to here. And then after that, you need to close that valve. Finally, when the heart is squeezing, is contracting, you're pumping blood from the ventricles to the lungs to be oxygenated. Then you need another valve open, and that is going to be the pulmonary valve or the semi-lunar right valve. You need that valve open. But when you have the blood already in your great vessel, you need to close again this valve to avoid the backflow from the pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, to the right ventricle again. Then, at the beginning, you're going to have blood in your atria, and you need your valves open. And at the end, you're going to need to close those valves, both AB and semi-lunar, to avoid the backflow. This is going to be the whole thing is happening at the same time on the right side and the left side, and this is called cardiac cycle. That cardiac cycle is vital. You need to understand that, and we're going to use a video on the lab with that. Let me see, guys. So far we have two things to do for the next lab. It's going to be something with the ECG and the dissection, and we're going to be using the first minute of our time about these two events. We're going to be using first the dissection to understand the structure, and we're going to be using the ECG. We're going to be using some devices called, it's going to be ECG, but with your fingers. You don't need to use any BPAC or nothing like that. Invade is going to be accessible for us, and then working with the heart dissection and the cardiac cycle and ECG. Guys, this session is going to be shorter. It's the first session, and I would like to know if you have any questions so far, guys. Remember, these sessions, they're going to be recorded and available for you every single week. Maybe this recording is going to be available for you um, maybe tomorrow. You can see again these slides. By the way, you have every single slide of these ones in your D2L. You have available your own presentations. I'm here only because you can have some questions. These lectures, online lectures, they're going to be available for you, the recording or the live session, whatever you want. Even though we're going to have several chances to be in contact. You can ask something through the Remind app, you can ask something through the email, or you can ask something during these sessions or the face-to-face sessions. Guys, do you have any questions so far? Do you have any question, any concern? Do you have any questions about the homework? Do you have any questions about the lab modules? Especially the new guys. I know Brianna, Daniela, Jasmine, and Osvaldo. They're my students from previous semester. I don't know if Adrian, Valeria, Gutierrez, it was with me in previous semesters, but it's the same thing. You have to work with the homework at the beginning. You're doing videos at the beginning. Then you have to solve your lab module, and you need to deliver the YouTube link for the homework and the PDF for the lab module. And then this module number one is going to be, take advantage of this, because this is going to be the longest one. We have up to 4 weeks for this one. And your module is going to be due, if I remember well, it's going to be on February the 15th. Then you have almost a whole month. The second, the third, and the fourth is going to be only 3 weeks per each one. And take advantage of this. Guys, let me know. You can open your mics or you can write in your chats if you have any questions so far. Adrian, do you have any questions? Brianna, do you have any questions? Daniela, do you have any questions? Jasmine, do you have any questions? Osvaldo, do you have any questions? Nice. If you don't have more questions, guys, if you have no more concerns, we're going to continue this session next week. And we're going to try to go over this material for dissection and for the ECG during the next week on Tuesday. And actually, we're going to try to have another piece of lecture during that day. Guys, see you next week. Bye-bye. Have a good day.